The sound that cut through the boardroom wasn't a word. It was laughter. Harsh, dismissive laughter that echoed off mahogany walls and bounced across the 47th floor glass windows overlooking Manhattan. Marcus Whitmore's face flushed crimson as his meaty palms slapped the conference table, making water glasses tremble and legal pads shift. He doubled over, one hand gripping his Hermes tie, unable to contain himself. The other board members exchanged uncomfortable glances, but three of them, old guard, old money, joined in with polite chuckles that cut just as deep. Jasmine Carter stood at the head of that table, ID badge still clipped to her blazer, and felt every eye in the room dissect her. Her fingers tightened around the leather portfolio she'd been handed 30 seconds ago by the company attorney. 30 seconds. That's all it took for her world to pivot from corporate law associate grinding 70-hour weeks to this moment, this room, these men who looked at her brown skin and saw something disposable, something laughable. Marcus finally caught his breath, wiping actual tears from his eyes. "You?" he wheezed, pointing at her with a finger adorned by a gold ring that probably cost more than her car. "You're telling us that Richard named you?" He gestured wildly at the empty chair at the head of the table, the one with the worn leather and the brass nameplate that still read Richard Wellington III. "You as his successor? As interim CEO of Wellington Industries?" The attorney cleared her throat. "Mr. Wellington's will is explicit, and he filed the succession documents 6 months before his death. Ms. Carter has been his choice since—" "Since when?" Marcus cut her off, his jovial mask slipping to reveal something uglier underneath. "Since she brought him coffee? Since she filed his briefs? Come on." He looked around the table, seeking validation. "This is Richard's idea of a joke. He was eccentric, sure, but this, naming some random associate to run a $3.2 billion company?" Random. The word hung in the air like a noose. Jasmine felt her jaw clench so hard her molars ached. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest, "I understand this is unexpected, but Mr. Wellington made his wishes clear. I've spent 3 years working directly on—" "3 years?" Another board member, Gerald Chen, silver hair, silver tongue, leaned back in his chair. "Marcus is right. This is absurd. Wellington Industries has been in the Wellington family for 60 years. You think we're going to let some—" He paused, and Jasmine watched him choose his next word carefully. "Some junior associate walk in here and play CEO?" "Some." Another careful word, another blade wrapped in silk. Jasmine's phone buzzed in her pocket. 3 short pulses. The code. Her heart rate spiked, but she kept her face neutral, corporate mask firmly in place. Not yet. She couldn't react yet. "Gentlemen," the attorney tried again, "Ms. Carter's appointment is legally binding. Mr. Wellington was of sound mind when—" "Was he, though?" Marcus stood, all 6'3" of him, tailored suit stretching across shoulders, broadened by decades of rowing at Yale. He walked toward Jasmine with slow, deliberate steps, predatory. Richard was 83. He'd been showing signs of, let's call it confusion, making strange decisions, paranoid about the board, about me specifically. He stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and overwhelming. "Maybe he thought you'd be easy to control, a puppet. Is that what you are, Jasmine? Someone's puppet?" The air in the room shifted. 2 more board members stood, flanking Marcus like sentries. Jasmine recognized the formation, the closing of ranks, corporate America's immune system activating against a foreign body. Her. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, her voice dropping lower, "I suggest you step back." "Or what? You'll sue? With what firm? You think anyone in this city will represent you against Wellington Industries? Against me?"
He leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper meant to carry. "You're out of your depth, sweetheart. Way out. The board will challenge this appointment. We'll tie it up in court for years. By the time the dust settles, there won't be a company left for you to run. And you," his smile widened, "you'll be back to fetching coffee, if you're lucky." Jasmine's phone buzzed again. 4 pulses this time. Now. Her fingers moved to her portfolio, finding the tab she'd marked. But Marcus wasn't done. "You want to know what I think happened?" He turned to address the room, performing now. "I think Richard felt guilty about all his liberal hand-wringing, his foundation work, his diversity initiatives. So in a moment of senility, he decided to make a statement, put a black woman in charge, check a box, assuage his conscience before he died." He spun back to face her. "But this isn't a charity, Ms. Carter. This is business, real business, and you simply don't have what it takes." The room held its breath. Jasmine opened her portfolio and removed the single sheet of paper. She placed it on the table and slid it toward Marcus with one finger. "Read the date," she said quietly. Marcus glanced down. His smile faltered. "What is this?" 6 months before Richard died, he filed those succession documents naming me as his choice. But that's not the document you're looking at. That document is from 3 years ago, the day I was hired. She paused, letting it sink in. Richard Wellington didn't hire me to be his associate. He hired me to be his successor. Every brief I worked, every case I managed, every late night in this building, that was my training, my apprenticeship. Gerald Chen snatched the paper, scanning it. His face went ashen. "This can't be real. Call his estate attorneys. Call anyone you want. That document is notarized, witnessed, and filed with the SEC. Richard spent 3 years teaching me everything about this company, every division, every contract, every skeleton in every closet." She let that last word hang. Everything. Marcus's face had gone from red to white. "You're bluffing." Jasmine pulled out her phone, tapped twice, and a projector screen descended from the ceiling. The lights dimmed automatically. On the screen appeared a photograph, Marcus Whitmore shaking hands with a man in a hard hat. Behind them, a construction site. Nothing unusual, except for the date stamp. "Recognize this?" she asked. Marcus said nothing. His jaw had locked. "That's the Sao Paulo housing development, Wellington Industries' biggest international project in the last decade. $2 billion, mostly government contracts and subsidies for affordable housing." She clicked to the next slide, a bank statement. "Except $37 million of that government money didn't go to housing. It went to shell companies you personally control, companies that happen to share addresses with luxury condos that are now mysteriously owned by several of your children through trusts." The room exploded. 3 board members shot to their feet. Gerald Chen was already backing towards the door. The company attorney's face had gone from neutral professional to barely concealed shock. "You have no proof of—" Marcus started. "I have 6 years of documentation, bank transfers, email chains, recorded phone calls where you thought Richard wasn't listening. Richard was old, Marcus, not stupid. He knew what you were doing. He'd been building a case for 2 years before he got sick." She clicked again. More documents filled the screen. "And it's not just you. Gerald's phantom consulting fees, Patricia's insider trading before the merger announcement, David's kickbacks from the Singapore suppliers." Patricia Hendricks, silent until now, stood so fast her chair crashed backwards. "This is extortion."
"No," Jasmine corrected, voice sharp as a scalpel. "This is evidence. Evidence Richard collected because he loved this company more than he loved any of you. He knew what you were doing, and it killed him. Literally killed him. The stress, the betrayal." Her voice cracked slightly, and she let them see the real emotion underneath. "He was a good man who built something real, and you parasites were bleeding it dry." Marcus took a step toward her, fists clenched. "You little—" The door opened. 4 people in dark suits entered. FBI, their badges visible before they even spoke. Leading them was a woman Jasmine knew well, Agent Morrison, who'd been waiting in the lobby for the past hour, waiting for Jasmine's signal, the 3-pulse code on her phone. "Mr. Marcus Whitmore?" Agent Morrison's voice cut through the chaos like a judge's gavel. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and misappropriation of federal funds." The color drained from Marcus's face so fast he swayed. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The other board members backed away from him like he was radioactive. Agent Morrison nodded to her team. As they moved to cuff Marcus, she turned to Gerald and Patricia. "You're next. We'll give you 24 hours to turn yourselves in before we come looking. Use that time wisely." Marcus found his voice as they led him past Jasmine. "You think this changes anything? You think you can run this company? You're nothing, nothing." Jasmine met his eyes, and for the first time since entering this room, she smiled. Not a corporate smile, a real one. "I clerked for Judge Thurgood Morrison for 2 years before law school. I graduated top of my class at Yale. Richard chose me because I earned it every single day." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "You laughed at me because you saw my skin before you saw my resume. That was your first mistake. Your second was thinking Richard was weak enough to be manipulated. Your third," she glanced at the FBI agents, "putting it all in writing." They dragged Marcus out. His protests echoed down the hallway, growing fainter. The remaining board members, the ones not implicated, sat frozen, staring at Jasmine like they were seeing her for the first time. She turned to face them, shoulders back, chin up. "Let me be clear about how this is going to work. 4 of you were complicit in various degrees of fraud. You have 48 hours to submit your resignations. The rest of you have a choice. You can fight this appointment, tie the company up in litigation, and watch everything Richard built crumble. Or," she paused, letting the words settle, "I am the CEO. I was chosen, trained, and prepared for this role, and unlike Marcus, I actually care about this company surviving." David Chen, Gerald's younger brother, the only board member who'd remained seated throughout, spoke for the first time. "What's your first move as CEO?" Jasmine had been waiting for this question for 3 years. "We're going to finish the Sao Paulo project, the real version. $2 billion in affordable housing like we promised. We're going to claw back every stolen dollar and put it where it was supposed to go. We're going to rebuild this company's reputation, one ethical decision at a time." She looked around the table. "And we're going to make sure this never happens again, starting with complete transparency, full audits, independent oversight." "That's corporate suicide," someone muttered. "No, that's corporate integrity, something this company forgot it needed." She walked to Richard's chair, her chair now, and sat down. The leather creaked. The nameplate caught the light. "You have 24 hours to decide if you're staying or leaving. Meeting adjourned." They filed out in silence. Jasmine waited until the door closed before letting her hands shake. She gripped the armrests, the leather warm under her palms, and allowed herself exactly 60 seconds to feel everything. The rage, the vindication, the terror of what came next, the weight of a $3.2 billion company now resting on her shoulders. Her phone rang, a number she recognized. She answered. "It's done." Richard Wellington's estate attorney exhaled audibly on the other end. "Thank God, I wasn't sure you'd go through with it." Jasmine said softly. "He trained me for this, all of it. The legal work was just cover. He was teaching me to lead, to fight, to survive in rooms full of people who don't think I belong." She looked at her reflection in the glass windows, Manhattan stretched out below her, glittering and indifferent. Somewhere in this city, Marcus Whitmore was being processed into the federal system. Gerald and Patricia were probably calling lawyers. The news would break by morning. Wellington Industries interim CEO, Jasmine Carter, 32, the first black woman to lead the company in its 60-year history.
The headlines would write themselves. But tonight, in this moment, Jasmine allowed herself something she rarely did. She allowed herself to imagine Richard Wellington, eccentric, brilliant, stubborn Richard Wellington, sitting across from her with that slight smile he got when a legal strategy came together perfectly. She imagined him raising a glass of his ridiculous expensive scotch and saying what he always said when she nailed a brief: "Well played, counselor, well played." She smiled at her reflection, straightened her blazer, and opened her laptop. The real work was just beginning. But for the first time in 3 years, since the day Richard had handed her that first file and said, "Let's see what you're really made of," she knew exactly who she was. Not a puppet, not a token, not a joke. The CEO of Wellington Industries. And she'd earned every letter of that title.